Good Thursday morning, everyone. Behold the seal of Andromalius. We're going to talk about Andromalius just a little bit today. Andromalius is the 72nd spirit of the Goetia. And he's really, well, I'll actually read you what the Lesser Key of Solomon has to say about Andromalius. And I'm reading from the Key to Solomon's Key. Andromalius, the 72nd spirit in order, is named Andromalius. He is an earl, great and mighty, appearing in the form of a man holding a great serpent in his hand. His office is to bring back both the thief and the goods which be stolen, and to discover all wickedness and underhand dealings, and to punish all thieves and other wicked people, and also to discover treasure that be hid. He ruleth over 36 legions of spirits, and his seal is thus, which thou shalt wear as aforesaid. There it is. Okay, I'm going to check something just for a second here to see if my volume is up. Hang on. It is. Anyway, why am I talking about Andromalius and on this Andromalius kick? Well, the last couple days, you might have noticed that I put up, or I created and put up a version of this. This is my my other, I guess, favorite spirit, and I've got its sigil or seal on this book too, with King Solomon there sitting in the middle of them. Not only that, but you might notice that even on My Life with the Spirits, we have Andromalius appearing there. Well, yesterday, after being inspired by this incredibly helpful book, if you're at all interested in the genesis and the genealogy of these spirits that Solomonic magicians work with, this great book, thick, beautiful, pretty expensive book by David Crowhurst, and Stephen Skinner and I also wrote forwards to it. But it gives insight on spirits that you've been working with off of the Lesser Key of Solomon for years and years and years. And it gives insights to where they come from, what their real names are, where they stand in the pecking order of classical magical literature and such. It's for those of you who've been practicing forms of Solomonic magic already for years. It's really a fun book and very scholarly. So I found out that Orobos, one of my favorite spirits, his original name was probably Auros. And yesterday I got all excited with it, and I created this seal here, which I posted on my Facebook page and everything else, this sort of magic square with Orobos's or Oros's sigil. And I want you to know it took me a long time on PowerPoint to create that seal. Those swirls are almost insanely impossible to do. But I digress. Yesterday, as I always do, or I often do, I spent hours and hours and hours on something, and then I overlook the smallest detail that completely fucks the whole thing up. I created this yesterday and spelled it A-U-R-U-S. And I made this graphic and everything else and posted it, and was all proud of it, and people commented and everything else. Then I checked it again today, going through here, and it's A-U-R-A-S. So I completely redid the whole thing today and posted the right one. Anyway, be that as it may, we were talking about Andromalius. I read you what Andromalius does. Andromalius is, as the 72nd spirit of the 72 spirits of the Goetia. He appears as the last decan of Pisces in the year, and the last decan of Pisces, of course, would be the 10 of Cups. And sure enough, there's Andromalius on the 10 of Cups. But I got an Andromalius story. As a matter of fact, I probably got lots of Andromalius stories. But the one that's most suitable for sharing is one that I actually wrote in My Life with the Spirits. Now, in My Life with the Spirits, I tell a couple of Goetia stories, and which illustrate my magical field theory, my bonehead magical field theory about the Goetic spirits representing blind forces that we're most easily affected by through our nepish, our animal soul. That part of the Kabbalistic soul deals with emotion and blind forces in our own character, but that you bring them under control of the Ruach, or the next higher level of the soul. You bring them under control of your intelligence. Otherwise, they just run amok. Anyway, it's a nice sort of way of viewing the method to the madness of Solomonic magic. And it's also part of my working theory that you really have to be in touch with that level. You have to make it a personal thing and understand it to be an impersonal thing that may have objective results, but caused by subjective causes. Andromalius seems to be the one exception to this rule, and I'm still scratching my head. Because Andromalius brings back things that are stolen, and brings back the thief too that stole that object, it would seem that Andromalius would be a very handy and helpful spirit servant, friend. It would be nice. How many of us have everything from stolen, our hearts stolen, our cars stolen, our things that get stolen, and we would love to get them back and or punish the thief. And wouldn't it be nice to at least have something to vent your frustration and your anger, your blind neppishy bile at. Well, anyway, I'm going to read you this from My Life with the Spirits. As I mentioned earlier, I believe that the complexes of natural energy and intelligence that can be personified as spirits of the Goetia reside deep in the magician's animal soul, Nepish. The key to successfully isolating and redirecting these spirits lies in our ability to balance and integrate the other parts of our soul to such a degree that these unruly rascals find it easier to cooperate with the magician's game plan than to resist it. This is a very personal thing. Obviously, it was a terrible idea for Matt and I described an earlier Goetic experiment where another magician and I teamed up to whip up a spirit. It didn't work out. Don't share a fiend with a friend. Anyway, let's see. Obviously, it was a terrible idea for Matt and I to engage in a dual conjuration of a Goetic spirit. A slave cannot serve two masters. As soon as I formally withdrew from the operation, Matt and Belial, and those were the only two characters that really should have been operating in the first place, Matt and Belial became focused on the job at hand and eventually triumphed. Until then, it was a terrifying comedy of errors. That, too, story is in My Life with the Spirits. Ever since I have resisted the temptation to stick my nose into someone else's magical business. However, from time to time, friends or acquaintances come to me seeking magical solutions to everyday problems. The best that I can do is to counsel them as how I might magically proceed in the same situation. I can never be sure that my advice is correct, because I have no way of knowing another person's karmic profile or the depth of their commitment to the operation. Welcome back, dear. A few years after my experience with Belial, two of our dearest friends, Pat and Terry, I call them Pat and Terry in the book, but I don't think they would object if I share with you that it is Doug and Karen. And they might not even object if I would say they were Doug and Karen James, very good Facebook friends here, and they might be listening in. Doug and Karen bought the most beautifully appointed Volkswagen camper. They were wildly generous with it and seized any opportunity to take Constance and I and other lodge members on road trips, campouts, baseball games, and mini vacations. Then, less than 2 months after buying it, the new van was stolen from the parking lot of a movie theater. The police held out no hope of its recovery. Doug and Karen lived less than 60 miles from the Mexican border, and it was likely that the car was out of the country before they came out of the theater and discovered it missing. We were all heartbroken. Just out of frustration and outrage, I wanted to evoke Andromalius, who brings back stolen things. But then I remembered my experience with Belial and reconsidered. I did, however, instruct Doug how he might easily evoke Andromalius. Doug was not very enthusiastic about performing that kind of magic, and I was sure that a half-hearted effort would fail. Doug performed some kind of conjuration, as he shared with me, some kind of conjuration of Andromalius. He never told me exactly what he did, but he shared that it wasn't a full-blown formal conjuration. And he gave the spirit 2 weeks to recover the car. To everyone's surprise, the car was recovered exactly 2 weeks later at the Mexican border. The thieves had taken it to Mexico and were trying to cross back into the United States with a shipment of contraband parrots. Andromalius was a hero. I don't know if I mentioned it here, but the only damage done to the car, the only thing missing. There was nothing. I think totally missing after the car was returned, but the car was the interior of the car was kind of cluttered and covered in parrot shit. A very demonic thing. A few days later, I told the story to an accountant at work. I worked at a commercial real estate company, who immediately demanded that I tell her how to whip up Andromalius. Her sister's car had just been stolen by her ex-husband. I sketched out the spirit's sigil and gave her a crash course in Solomonic evocation. The next morning, she related to me how she drew a chalk circle and triangle on the floor of her garage and stood in the circle with a bottle of tequila and screamed curses at her former brother-in-law in the form of the sigil Andromalius in a triangle, a chalk triangle. That night when I left work, she greeted me in the parking lot in her sister's recovered car, a VW van. And she rewarded me with a big kiss and a box of Boodle's British gin. It was my favorite at the time. I guess everybody at work knew that I was a gin lush. Since then, I have given Andromalius to 4 other individuals for the return of their stolen automobiles. Footnote: one person didn't even get a chance to evoke him. She left our house in a cab with Andromalius' sigil drawn on the back of an envelope. When she returned her home, her car, a VW van, was waiting for her in the driveway. He hasn't failed yet with the cars, and I'm at a loss to explain why. In my opinion, none of these people even came near plumbing the infernal depths of their neppish hells to harness the blind power of their personal demons. Now there's a footnote here. Constance evoked Andromalius to recover a large box of vitamins and other motherly gifts that she sent at great expense to our son in Japan. I had no doubts that Andy would comply to a mother's wrath, especially when the nourishment of the baby bird was at stake. Sure enough, the box showed up in Japan. All our subsequent shipments bear the seal of Andromalius conspicuously displayed front and back on the box. I must add another footnote to that footnote. is that when he moved to China, another box got lost, and Andy didn't, and it had Andy's seal on the outside, and it never came back. So, just saying. The stolen cars, while a painful loss, presented more of an inconvenience than a gut-wrenching outrage. Most of them, to my knowledge, merely went through the motions of standing for a moment in a circle and making a wish at a paper sickle in a triangle. Why did it work? Is Andromalius that easy to enlist? Is he that cooperative? I feel I must apologize to the reader because I have no clean explanation for this spirit's behavior. It runs counter to my magical field theory about what these spirits are and how they operate. The only thing I can say is this: if your car gets stolen and you want it back, especially if it's a VW bus, it couldn't hurt to evoke Andromalius. Now, I say that as I knock on wood because I still have a Volkswagen bus of my own. And the older it gets, the more attractive it becomes to car connoisseurs. Anyway, let's knock on wood. Anyway, that's it for today. Constance is back on her bicycle trip to Trader Joe's, and I've got to get on with my day. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love's the law, love under will.